Good morning. I'm Richard Cho, and I'm the CEO of the Connecticut Coalition to End Homelessness. I'm pleased to welcome all of you to CCH's annual Training Institute and Conference. This event is our annual statewide conference on homelessness, where we bring together practitioners, experts, government leaders, our private sector supporters from all across our state to learn about and discuss the latest challenges and the latest strategies to achieve our common goal of ending homelessness in Connecticut. This year's theme is Housing Equals Justice, focusing on homelessness as an issue of racial justice, criminal justice, and economic justice. And as COVID-19 has made clear, also about health equity and justice. We have some remarkable speakers lined up, so I hope you'll be able to make as much time for as many sessions as possible. But before I begin, I want to do two things. First, I want to acknowledge that the land from which we're holding this event is the territory of the Mohegan, Mashantucket Pequot, Eastern Pequot, Schaghticoke, Golden Hill Paugussett, Nipmuc, and Lenape peoples who have stewarded this land that we now call Connecticut throughout the generations. We thank them for their strength and resilience in protecting this land and aspire to uphold our responsibilities according to their example. Second, I want to extend our gratitude to our presenting sponsors, Bank of America and Zillow, both of whom have been important partners in our work in so many ways. And I want to also extend a special thank you to our keynote sponsors, Microsoft and the Connecticut Department of Housing, as well as our many workshop sponsors. This week's event marks our 18th year holding this event. And of course, you may have noticed that things are a little bit different this year. First of all, instead of seeing you all in a big room, we're bringing together all of you via video and doing this free to the public. And while I miss seeing a room full of faces in a ballroom, this also means that we were able to reach a lot more people. I'm pleased to share that we have over 900 people registered for this event, including 200 people from outside of our state. We have 53 out of 169 Connecticut cities and towns that are represented. We also have 28 states outside of Connecticut represented. And we also have some international representation with a few folks joining from Canada and other countries. I think the second thing that's different is that instead of a one-day event, we're now holding this as a week-long event with sessions running Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. each day. And I think third and most importantly, what makes this event different this year is that we're holding it in a time of immense challenges, unimaginable uncertainty, and yes, devastating loss, including personal loss. I want to take a moment to remember Shelter Now's director and CCH board member, David Dudley, who we lost unexpectedly in June. David Dudley was an amazing leader, a warrior in the fight for justice, and a wonderful husband, father, and friend, and we miss him every day. What a year it has been. We've had a global pandemic that has upended homeless services in our state, not to mention our home and work lives. That's made the work of helping our homeless neighbors harder than ever. That's required so many of you who are working on the front lines to put your own health and lives at risk. In addition, we've had ongoing instances of racial injustice that we're seeing, including so many senseless murders at the hands of law enforcement and racist acts. Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd. And I say their names, but I think about all the others who've gone unnamed, who've lost their lives, who've been harmed by the stark racial disparities that we see in housing access, economic opportunity, public safety, education, healthcare, and so much more. And who are harmed by all the micro and macro aggressions that perpetuate the society that systematically holds people down based on the color of their skin or their national or ethnic origin. And if this was not all, we find ourselves at a time when we're so divided. We're more divided than ever. And this division is tearing apart our sense of common identity and purpose as Americans, breaking down our trust and goodwill towards neighbors, and eroding our faith in government, in science, and in truth. What a year it has been indeed. But given all this, so we thought long and hard about whether we should even hold this event. Does everyone even have the time and energy to join a week-long conference? Would we be taking you all away from your important daily work? And who actually, who needs to sit through more video meetings or calls? And how could we actually pull off an event that could do justice to the enormity of this moment? So to answer these questions, I did what we do these days. I searched the internet. And I actually, in doing so, I stumbled upon a few quotes that gave me the confidence that holding this event is the right thing to do. The first quote's from Albert Einstein, who famously said, "We cannot solve our problems with the same level of thinking that created them." And if there's anything that this year has taught us, it's that we cannot expect to achieve our goal of ending homelessness in our state by working in the same way, using the same approaches, and achieving the same incremental progress. Yes, we have made steady reductions in homelessness in our state, and we should be proud of that. But this year has shown us that we're just one major crisis away from all that progress falling apart. It's clear we need to lift up our level of thinking, and our Housing Equals Justice event is intended to do that. So alongside some practical sessions that are focused on things like shelter diversion, rapid rehousing, and outreach, we also have discussions on securing the right to housing and addressing systemic racism. The second quote is from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who envisioned something called the beloved community, a vision in which all people can share in the wealth of the earth, in which poverty, hunger, and homelessness will not be tolerated, in which racism and all forms of discrimination, bigotry, and prejudice will be replaced by an all-inclusive spirit of sisterhood and brotherhood. I'm going to quote Dr. King, and he said, "I do not think of political power as the end, neither do I think of economic power as an end. There are ingredients in the objective that we seek in life, and that objective is a truly brotherly society, the creation of a beloved community." What brings us here today as a coalition is our collective interest in ending homelessness. But I think that underneath that collective interest is our shared conviction that all human lives have value, and that the foundation of that conviction is love. Love for humanity, love for your neighbors, and love for one another. In this time of division, what continues to bring me hope is being connected to all of you, community grounded in the belief that no one deserves to be homeless and that all human lives have value. I sincerely believe that you, our coalition, and our friends are working to create this beloved community. We are a coalition of people and organizations from all walks of life and experiences, but united by the vision that we can create a more just world in which everyone has a safe and stable home. And when I think about that, I could not imagine not holding this event in a year that brings together this coalition, this community. And the third and final quote I found is from feminist and poet Audre Lorde. She often wrote and spoke about not being afraid to speak, but the quote that I want to share you with is this. She said, "Sometimes we are blessed with being able to choose the time and the arena and the manner of our revolution, but more usually we must do battle where we are standing." And that is just what you all have done this year. You didn't expect or choose a global pandemic to arrive. You didn't get to choose this time or this arena for this crisis. You sprung into action. You protected and assisted thousands of people, both from sickness and homelessness. You helped return people home, and you saved lives. And you continue to do battle where you are standing every single day. So this is not the time and the arena and the manner in which we wanted to hold this event, but this moment is here anyway. Our challenges are great, and we must do battle where we are standing for our belief that homelessness is unjust and that housing equals justice. So with that, I want to turn to one of our members of our coalition and our beloved community, Joe Gianni, representing one of our two presenting sponsors, Bank of America, who will introduce our opening speaker. Joe, thank you so much, and please take it away.
Well, thank you, Richard, and thank you for those thoughts and words, and thanks to you and your staff for everything you do in Connecticut. And to you viewers, good morning. On behalf of my 3,000 colleagues across the state, we are thrilled to once again be presenting sponsor for the Connecticut Coalition to End Homelessness's annual conference, Housing Equals Justice. At Bank of America, we are committed to making a difference for our clients, our associates, and our communities, especially as it relates to economic opportunity and racial inequality. We've already stepped up to do even more during this crisis to serve our clients and support our communities and teammates. This not only includes our $1 billion commitment, but our ongoing work to help drive diversity and inclusion, racial equality, and economic opportunity and upward mobility to deliver on our purpose to help make financial lives better. We will build on what our company is already doing by increasing our investments in communities for education, healthcare, food security, and housing. Having a warm, safe place to call home makes a huge difference. Why do we care? Dignity, livable wages, removing barriers to economic success. We partner with organizations locally that are working every day to help people living on the margins to move into better circumstances. I'd like to say a few words about what makes this event so important. Cross-sector work is complex and challenging and important to get right. Bringing all of you together moves the needle. Year after year, Connecticut has demonstrated that when we all work together in close collaboration, We can end homelessness. We're going to hear from a keynote speaker who has a unique perspective on what makes Connecticut's approach stand out nationally. Nan Roman is CEO of the National Alliance to End Homelessness, and she'll speak about the current state of homelessness in our nation. Nan is a leading national voice on the issue of homelessness. Under her guidance, the Alliance has been successful identifying and promoting innovative strategies for ending homelessness that have been adopted by communities across the country. In her role, Ms. Roman works closely with members of Congress and the administration, as well as officials and advocates at the state and local levels. She collaborates with the Alliance partners to educate the public about real nature of homelessness and effective solutions. Please join me in welcoming Nan Roman.
Thank you so much, Joe. And thanks to Bank of America for supporting this important convening. And thanks to Richard Cho and the Connecticut Coalition to End Homelessness for inviting me to join you today. And Richard, thank you so much for your very meaningful opening comments. I certainly wish that I could be together with you in person, as I have often been, but it's still really a pleasure to join our partners in Connecticut in the virtual world that we've all become so familiar with. And as Richard said, we're coming together at a tumultuous and challenging moment in our nation. We have the COVID-19 pandemic. With respect to homelessness, this has presented so many challenges in terms of staffing, PPE, space, isolation, and quarantine. We're all worried about outbreaks and transmission among people experiencing homelessness and among the staff. And now, of course, we're facing the winter and the flu and the resurgence of the COVID virus. And we have a recession. Widespread unemployment has continued, and lower wage workers are by far the most impacted by that, with few signs of improvement in that sector. A third challenge, as Richard noted, has been the issues of police violence, the protests around that, and the responses from the right, and the divisions in our country that have ensued. Another huge challenge for us is that all of these issues have disproportionately affected people of color. With respect to COVID, according to the CDC, Latinx and Native American people are 3 times more likely to be infected and 5 times more likely to be hospitalized than white people. African Americans are 5 times more likely to be hospitalized and twice as likely to die as white people. According to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, in the second quarter, while the overall unemployment rate was 13%, it was only 12% for whites, but it was 16% for African Americans and 17% for Latinx people. According to the American Public Health Association, on average, police kill nearly 3 men every day. Black men's mortality risk per 100,000 per year is between 2 and 2.5 deaths. Latino risk is around 1 death, and white risk is closer to 1/2 death. So there's tremendous disproportionality in all of these crisis areas that we're facing. And homelessness, of course, also disproportionately affects these groups. According to the 2019 AHR, of the homeless population, 40% are Black versus being 13% of the US population. 22% are Latinx versus 18% of the US population, and 3.2% are Native American versus 2% of the US population. So we have a trifecta really of serious challenges, all of which are disproportionately affecting people of color, and homelessness gets added into that mix. Given all of this, it would seem important that we all be on the same page in our nation about how to address the pandemic, the recession, and the civic and racial unrest we're experiencing. But we're not all on the same page. We're really nowhere near being all on the same page. In particular, at the national level, there's fundamental disagreement about what to do in all 3 areas. And we are, of course, in the middle of an election cycle. Things are extremely politicized. Neither side, to be honest, is too keen on compromising right now. We were very lucky to get the continuing resolution passed so that at least the government didn't shut down at the end of September. and even luckier to get the CARES Act passed with significant new resources for you to use to address COVID. But not much has happened since then. We haven't gotten a new stimulus bill as of this morning. The needs of the most vulnerable people are not being met. So it's a tough moment. We have to acknowledge that it is a very difficult moment. But even in the midst of these difficulties, there are opportunities. Despite the challenges, great things can happen. And I must say that you here in Connecticut have already accomplished some pretty great things during COVID and before. The Alliance has worked closely over the years with many of you in Connecticut, most especially with our very close partner, the Connecticut Coalition to End Homelessness. And I would also give thanks to the partnership and incredible leadership and support of the Melville Charitable Trust. Together, we have worked with you on developing and improving best practices for emergency shelter, rapid rehousing, critical time intervention, and other emerging solutions to the problems of homelessness. You've been a first adopter on the forefront of so many new practices, always looking for better ways to make progress. And I know that the leadership of the coalition has played a huge role in that. In many cases, you have developed and advanced new strategies and solutions. For example, I know you've made great advances in your racial equity work, using a new dashboard and approaches to ensure that your services and your outcomes are equitable. You've been national leaders on diversion, ramping up so that a high percentage of people who lose their homes and are about to enter shelter or the streets are instead diverted to alternative housing using hard-to-find flexible funds. I know that you have used data matches to make the case that so many of our returning citizens end up homeless, and that this has led to rapid rehousing for many re-entering, so that their return is to housing and not to the streets. And I know that around COVID, you quickly got many people into hotels and motels for quarantine, and that now, through the 1,000 homes, you're trying to ensure that they exit those rooms for homes, not shelter or the streets. And I understand that you just surpassed your goal and have now housed 834 individuals and 208 families through this initiative, which is fantastic. You have so much to be proud of here in Connecticut, and your determination to adopt practices that work and to innovate when necessary make you one of the highest performing states on homelessness. I guess that's why 200 people from other states are listening in on your conference. As a result, in 2020, you had fewer than 3,000 people experiencing homelessness, and only about 10% of them were unsheltered versus 37% of people who are unsheltered nationally. These are great numbers, and they show your capacity. But I know that your goal is to end homelessness, and that goal has not been achieved. And we're facing all of those issues that I spoke about earlier. So looking forward now, what are the challenges that are coming? And what are some of the opportunities and things that we can be thinking about to improve our systems in the future? In terms of what's coming, certainly we know that the COVID pandemic will continue. It's hard to think that we'll be returning to anything entirely normal much before 2022, although things should certainly begin to improve over the next year. We know that the economic issues will also carry on, and that they will likely persist in disproportionately affecting the lowest income people, women, and minorities, those who are more likely to have service and hospitality jobs. They will continue to experience low wages and periods of unemployment. Unless the eviction moratorium is extended and/or there's a serious investment in rental assistance, there is likely to be a wave of evictions. Some of those evicted will certainly end up becoming homeless. These health, jobs, and housing challenges may lead to a new wave of homelessness. Dr. Brendan O'Flaherty of Columbia University predicts, based on unemployment projections, an increase of up to 40% in people experiencing homelessness. I certainly hope that he's wrong. It is important to note that homelessness tends to be a lagging indicator, so we might not see any increase in homeless numbers until later in 2021, and that gives us some time to consider changes to our system. Another challenge ahead is that despite continuing and growing need, state and local governments are broke and will have a hard time meeting that need. The federal government, which of course can more or less print money, may or may not take on a bigger load addressing that need. I think the election is likely to determine which way that goes. There are some serious demographic concerns as well that I think we need to worry about moving forward. The homeless population is aging quickly. The aged homeless population, and of course homeless people get older at a younger age, 50 or 55. The aging homeless population will double by 2025 and triple by 2030. Our system is not really equipped to handle the health needs of this group in either shelter or permanent supportive housing, any of our programs. The cost of housing assistance for this group would be easily offset by the healthcare savings, as housing them would improve their health and not to mention ending their homelessness. But so far that strategy of providing older people, homeless people with housing subsidy has not gained traction. A second demographic concern is around young people and their attachment to the labor market. A major factor in the emergence of homelessness in the early 1980s was a large cohort of young people, a high percentage of whom failed to attach to the labor market because of the recessions in the 70s and 80s. Many of these people became homeless, and this cohort has been the dominant group of homeless adults since that time. It looks as though there was a similar effect also after the Great Recession. We're just beginning to experience that as that cohort ages. I am deeply concerned that a similar thing could happen with a similarly large cohort of young people today. There is not only the recession and the lack of jobs, which we saw in the 80s, added to that is the education system that young people, or the education situation, I should say, that young people are facing today. Virtual schooling and the barriers that presents to people with less access to and experience with technology, and to non-English speaking households, the interruption of higher education, young people dropping out of school because they're just not interested in virtual learning. Together, these things may compound the market challenges that we saw in the 80s, resulting in a large group of young people being unable to qualify for, to find, or to retain steady, well-paying employment, and then turning into the next generation of homelessness. This really does need to be addressed so that we don't face increasing homelessness in the future. These are just some of the challenges that we will face. Despite these challenges, I think there are some unique opportunities that could help us accelerate progress toward our goal of ending homelessness if we're bold enough to seize them. The Alliance, together with our colleagues at the National Low-Income Housing Coalition, the National Healthcare for the Homeless Council, and the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, and others, and with the support of the Melville Charitable Trust, by the way, developed a framework for an equitable COVID-19 homelessness response. This framework is focused on how jurisdictions should respond to the pandemic and the recession, but we also note that this current challenging moment presents some real opportunities that might result in us coming out of our current situation better than we went into it, with an improved and more outcome-oriented approach to homelessness, with a better homelessness system. So let me discuss that a bit. The framework has a few key values that I think are relevant to thinking about the future. First is the commitment to address racial disparities. We know that these disparities drive a tremendous amount of homelessness, and it's going to be pretty much impossible to end it without addressing them. There's a lot of will and commitment about doing a better job on this right now, on figuring out ways to use funds and do our work to eliminate disparities. One way to do this is to involve people with lived experience, people of color, and others affected in planning and implementation of everything we do. Another way, which I think you're doing here, is to collect and analyze data that can reveal disparities in our services and outcomes, and then take steps to remediate these disparities. Another important value of the framework is the imperative to help people with the highest needs first. We're often tempted to help lower need people first because it feels like we could help more of them and move them out of homelessness faster, and then we would have the system for the people with higher needs. But this tends to result, helping the highest, lower need people first actually tends to result in increasing, not decreasing, numbers of homeless people. When we're talking about the homelessness funding, people who are homeless and unsheltered, older, medically vulnerable, disabled should be helped first before people with less serious barriers and problems. This is also a race equity strategy, as people with more serious problems are more likely to be people of color due to systemic discrimination in areas like healthcare and housing. We often hear too that it would be better to prevent people from becoming homeless rather than waiting to help them after they become homeless. And this is certainly true. It would be better to prevent homelessness. Unfortunately, no one has really figured out how to predict with any accuracy who would become homeless. Notwithstanding that, a lot of homelessness funding gets spent every year on eviction prevention under the theory that it will stop people from becoming homeless and thus reduce homelessness. Research and data, however, indicate that eviction prevention is really a very poor tool to accomplish that. Very few people who are poor and evicted become homeless. The vast majority of people who receive eviction prevention assistance would never have become homeless in the first place. Eviction prevention is really needed and very, very important to increase housing stability. It just shouldn't be seen as a strong tool for reducing homelessness, and it shouldn't be funded using homelessness money because we already don't have enough money for the people who are currently homeless. Witness in Connecticut that 10% of people who are homeless are unsheltered. A third important value of the framework is that our goal should be to house people, not just get them into shelter or hotels and motels. I think that's pretty well established in Connecticut. A final value is the need to act much more quickly and with urgency. When the pandemic hit, as Richard mentioned in his opening remarks, you all acted very quickly. You decompressed shelter and moved people into hotels and motels. You partnered with FEMA and healthcare providers. You did in weeks what normally can take months or even years. It's difficult to maintain a sense of urgency for years on end. And of course, we have been fighting homelessness for years on end. Becoming homeless is an urgent problem for the people who experience it. But the homelessness system often seems to them to lack any sense of urgency. There is intake, there is assessment, there's moving to a shelter, there's scheduling time with the case manager, collecting all the information, seeing where you stand with respect to priorities, prioritization. Nationally, the length of time people spend homeless is going up. We need it to be going down, way down. Given these challenges, what opportunities do we have moving forward to come out the other end of this with a much better homelessness system based on what we've learned? What should our priorities be moving forward? The pandemic has placed homelessness firmly within a public health context. This understanding could help us to create formal resourced partnerships with key health entities and link that with housing. Candidates for partnership might be public health and emergency management departments, hospitals, managed care organizations, and housing authorities. Similarly, the recession has demonstrated the importance of training and employment among low-wage workers. Formal and ongoing resource partnerships with employment services and unions could be forged. An important feature of the race and equity discussion has been the importance of engaging people with a broad range of lived experiences in all elements of planning and implementation. It's similarly important to ensure a full range of culturally specific programming and include leadership of people with cultural familiarity and competency for Native American and other groups. Your work here in Connecticut has shown the importance of taking diversion to scale. The earlier in the homelessness experience we catch and help people, the more options they have for returning to housing quickly. This should be a key and much better resourced part of our new systems. We have a 7.5 million unit shortage of affordable housing in the nation, and that is, of course, a major driver of homelessness. Developing new housing is expensive, and we're losing ground. However, the real estate market seems to be changing with record low interest rates, flight from urban areas, and growing vacancy in hotels, motels, retail, and commercial property. There may be real opportunities to repurpose commercial use buildings for housing at much lower cost than new construction or substantial rehabilitation would engender. This deserves some serious investigation. California is acquiring thousands of units this way, and many other jurisdictions are getting on board. There has been a lot of talk about ending the use of congregate shelter in favor of non-congregate shelter spaces. Congregate shelter can be traumatic, unsafe, and unhealthy. Most people experiencing homelessness don't really like it. Certainly, COVID-19 has pointed out the public health challenges of all kinds of congregate living, including shelter. Our framework recommends that jurisdictions seriously consider eliminating congregate shelter. Of course, there is a balance that has to be found between investments in improved emergency shelter and investments in housing. But in Connecticut, with a relatively small number of homeless people and the possibility of really reducing length of stay, this might be something to seriously consider. These suggestions are, of course, all about essentially accepting the status quo, playing the hand we are dealt, and running a better homelessness system. We can definitely also think bigger, as Richard discussed. We could create a nation in which there was a floor beneath which we would not let people fall. We could ensure that everyone had a decent place to live, healthcare, and food. Providing everyone in our nation with a decent place to live, healthcare, and food, and you're gonna have to excuse me for a moment because my computer just fritzed out. Doing this, providing everyone in our nation with a decent place to live, healthcare, and food, is not beyond our means. It's really about priorities. We could do it. We have just decided not to do it. I would guess that the result of the upcoming election will have a lot to do with whether we move in this direction in the future. And on that note, let me just finally mention one other responsibility I think that we have with respect to people who are homeless, and that is around voting. People experiencing homelessness are often dependent upon the decisions of public officials for their very survival. Who is elected matters to their well-being. Further, if we are to center racial equity in our work, given the historical and systemic efforts to suppress voting of minorities, especially African Americans, and given the disproportionality of these groups in the homelessness population, we are compelled to help our consumers to vote. I would ask you to add to your already overwhelming responsibilities an initiative to register your clients to vote and to plan now how you will help them ensure that they are able to place their votes. There's no legal barrier, of course, to you doing that as long as you don't tell them who to vote for. And indeed, I would say it is our responsibility to help them. The Alliance Everyone Votes campaign, which is on our website, endhomelessness.org, can help you with this. The National Coalition for the Homeless has a lot of information about it. I hope that you can help your clients with this task. And once again, I'm having a computer problem. 1 second. We face many big issues in our nation, and in your state, you do as well, and you will hear others talking about these big issues today. There are many big problems, and it can be tempting to say that we can't end homelessness until we solve these problems. We all have to work on these issues of justice. That is absolutely true. But I believe that the work of ending homelessness doesn't have to wait until justice is fully achieved, but rather can contribute to the achievement of justice. I want to leave you with this. We have it in our power at this moment to do something big, something significant about homelessness. We have some additional resources through the stimulus bill. We might get some more if we're lucky. We have knowledge, we have determination. These are necessary ingredients. We can make change. In the 1970s, when we didn't have widespread homelessness, there was also income inequality. There was not universal health care. There was plenty of racism, discrimination. The nation was politically divided, and yet there was not homelessness to speak of. We can do better, and now, perhaps surprisingly, might be a good moment for us to try. Thank you so much for inviting me to be with you. Thank you so much for all of the work that you do. Thank you to the coalition for all it does. I look forward to a time when we can all be together in person to work and move forward to end homelessness.
Nan, thank you. Thank you so much. I wish, again, we were in a large room where you'd hear the applause. And again, that applause coming from not only the words that you left us with, but frankly, all of your leadership that you're providing at the national level on ending homelessness. So thank you so much. And as always, thank you for your guidance, your partnership, and for challenging us always to do better and and work harder. With that, I want to now just note that I hope all of you will continue to stay with us for the rest of the week. We have a fabulous conference planned for you. Today, I'm especially excited about the lunchtime keynote that will feature former United Nations Special Rapporteur for the adequate housing, and now Global Director of the Shift, Leilani Farha, who'll provide a keynote address on how Connecticut can become the first state in the country to secure the right to housing. And following her remarks, Congresswoman Jahana Hayes and State Senator Saud Anwar will speak a little bit about what would it actually entail to make Connecticut that first state in the country to secure housing as a basic human right. Throughout the week, let me actually share with you a quick overview of our event. There we go. So we also have a number of different sessions throughout the week. Let me go through that in a second. I do want to pause quickly to say that putting together a week-long virtual conference was no small feat. Essentially, what it means is 40 one-hour webinars back-to-back. So it's a pretty major endeavor. I want to just shout out to the entire team at CCH. I'm not going to name all of them, but just an amazing amount of work that they put into this event. So really want to thank CCH staff. I also want to thank all of you who are presenting and moderating various sessions throughout our week. So as I mentioned, our lunchtime keynote is Leilani Farha, followed by Congresswoman Jahana Hayes and State Senator Saud Anwar. That's brought to you by Microsoft as the keynote sponsor. On Tuesday, our lunchtime keynote will be a presentation. It's sponsored by Zillow, but it's also presented by Zillow, where Dr. Cheryl Young, senior economist at Zillow, will present on some of the research that Zillow has conducted that links homelessness to rising rates of rental costs and rent burdens, but also some of the trends of what she's seeing in the housing market and the rental market during COVID. Following her keynote address, there'll be remarks from both Ann Oliva and Jill Kaduri, who many of you know are national experts who are also working at the federal level on securing additional rental assistance through federal policy. That will be this session is also sponsored by Connecticut Department of Housing, and it will be introduced by Commissioner Sela Mosquera-Bruno. On Wednesday, we have a keynote address from Bobby Watts, who's the CEO of the National Healthcare for the Homeless Council. Bobby will be talking about, frankly, what Nan spoke about, this trifecta of COVID-19, systemic racism, and homelessness that we're seeing. On Thursday, we have a dynamic panel that will be moderated by Connecticut Mirror's Kellen Lyons, but that will feature Monica Bell of Yale Law School, Donald Whitehead, who's the head of the National Coalition for the Homeless, as well as State Representative Brandon McGee, Commissioner Angel Kiros from the Department of Correction, and our own Undersecretary for Criminal Justice Policy, Mark Pelka. And it'll be, I think, a really interesting conversation that talks about the ways that housing and homelessness intersect with criminal justice, policing, and residential segregation. And as Nan mentioned, This is an important election year, maybe the most important election year we've ever had. And we'll be having Jerry Jones, also from the National Alliance to End Homelessness, to really kick us off on a Get Out the Vote rally. We're going to do our best to try to register as many people to vote. And so Jerry will talk about what's at stake in this election, and then we'll also hear from some examples of what's happening from many of you, our members, to help get out the vote among people experiencing homelessness. I want to just quickly go over a few other sessions that we have. As you know, the bread and butter of our ATI has always been trainings and sessions focused on practice. So today we have a session at 11 o'clock on eliminating shelter wait lists. We also have a virtual tour of our coordinated access network system at 3 o'clock. On Wednesday, we have a session on rapid rehousing and critical time intervention. Thursday, a session on shelter diversion, and Friday, one on the changing nature of homeless outreach during COVID. We have a number of sessions focused on children and youth and families, youth homelessness, family homelessness, a training for McKinney-Vento liaisons within schools, a session on homelessness among students within colleges and universities, what the implications are of having children who experience homelessness, and then our own Be Homeful ambassadors will be hosting a ice cream social on Thursday at 4, where they'll be engaging in a conversation. So as you know, Be Homeful ambassadors are young people who are advocates and leaders for ending homelessness in our state. We have a number of sessions focused on justice, not only criminal justice, but also on policing. We have one that's focused on addressing systemic racism, a session on police and social worker partnerships, alternative responses to people with mental health and substance use needs that try to minimize police uses of force and that focus on service connections. We have a session on building the movement, on grassroots mobilization, as well as a session on our own new reentry housing initiative that we've launched during COVID in partnership with DOC and the Office of Policy and Management. We have a number of sessions focused on municipalities, including Tuesday. We're launching a new municipal certification as part of the Sustainable CT initiative on how towns and cities can take action to support efforts to end homelessness. Our own mayor's task force that we co-lead with the Connecticut Conference on Municipalities will have a session on Thursday at 2. And then my own hometown of Hamden, shout out to Hamden, is going to hold a virtual town hall on homelessness on Friday at 2, which we hope will become the start of a number of other virtual sessions, virtual town hall sessions throughout the state to hear from residents about how homelessness and housing issues are affecting town residents. We have several sessions focused on health, including one on helping people overcome some of their fears and anxieties about health screening. We have a session that looks at how data is showing us the health needs of people experiencing homelessness. And Friday, a very concrete Q&A session with CDC, the Department of Public Health, and the Department of Housing focused on COVID-19 guidance and homeless services. We have several sessions focused on tenants' rights. Right after this session actually is going to be an interesting, as I understand it, interactive session focused on understanding and protecting tenants' rights. We have a session focused on how we can overcome, not think of pets as a barrier to housing, but help find ways to accommodate pets, which we know are family members of people experiencing homelessness. And then a session that's really focused on building community for people with disabilities, which I'm very much looking forward to. We have several member showcases, a chance to really visit with a number of you members, and I know we're going to actually have virtual walkthroughs of some of the programs. Tuesday will be Shelter Now with new opportunities. On Wednesday, Access Community Access Agency. Thursday, Downtown Emergency Soup Kitchen, and Friday, Open Doors. And then, of course, we have several virtual happy hour sessions, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday from 4 to 5. Please come join us, bring your own beverage of any kind. It doesn't have to be an adult beverage, but just come and socialize with us. And lastly, remember, this is not only, Housing Equals Justice is not only our the name of our conference, but also our advocacy campaign. So please stay tuned with us as we go forward. And then lastly, just again, share what you're hearing at this really important event with the broader world. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We have several hashtags that you can use to tag your events. So with that, that's just a quick overview of our sessions. By the way, I wanted to just point out, if you haven't done so already, check out our bonfire store where you can buy your own swag, conference swag. We have hoodies, and we have these fabulous mugs. We have t-shirts and face masks, so please go to the Bonfire store and you can purchase your own Housing Equals Justice swag and show your support for our efforts. So next up in the schedule, again, is this fun and informative and interactive session. I think it's going to be a Jeopardy style quiz, if I'm understanding, on an understanding and protecting tenants' rights. And so please join us. You can leave this session and visit the Zoom link for the session that's entitled, Can They Do That? So again, thank you to Joe, thank you to Nan, to all of our sponsors and all the supporters. Hope you stay with us as much as you can this week. We look forward to seeing you soon.